talk about the NFC Championship game. What a fucking bummer. The first thought I have when Purdy goes out is that I cannot believe that we have to deal with 4-string quarterbacks in this NFC Championship game that we were so pumped about. And then Josh Johnson gets hurt. And then Purdy comes back in. He can't throw. Everyone was like, all right, why don't they just run the Wildcat? You just going to draw it up in the sand at halftime?
Maybe they don't even have like terms for that.
That's what I mean. I don't think you need, if you didn't practice it at all, which why would they? They have the best offense in the league. They don't need to run a bunch of gimmicky Wildcat shit.
They're not planning that.
And Purdy needs to be in the game because the offense can function. He can at least hand the ball off, and Christian McCaffrey doesn't have to be your quarterback. There is no good plan or good solution when you're down to a quarterback who cannot throw a forward pass against the best team in the NFC. Like, I understand it's tempting to be like, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? At a certain point, there's nowhere else you can turn.
No, I saw a few tweets that were saying stuff like this that I thought was hilarious. It was like, this felt like some high school playoff game where the starter comes down with mono or something like that, and and they have to start the freshman quarterback because he's the backup, and so they just run the ball in the entire second half. They ran the same reverse play to Debo probably like 5 times in the second half because that's all they got. It's so hard to change midstream. And on top of it, like you're saying, to run a functional offense. Okay, say CMC is the Wildcat quarterback. That's a break glass in case of emergency to run through like one series. It's not to run like a dozen plays. You only can run like 2 or 3 plays. Zone read. It's going to be really hard to turn to say like, okay, now we're running like quarterback keep to the outside out of nowhere. Like you said, drawing in the sand. It just is a bummer because like, you kind of felt some like cool stuff happening in this game. I have plenty of schematic notes. And I kind of just in the second half, my wife, I'm in the kitchen and I'm like cleaning up in the kitchen. She goes, "Isn't the game on right now?" I was like, it's second half. Like stuff happened. And I don't really need to watch this fourth quarter right now because that's how it felt.
The quarterback gets hurt. The backup quarterback goes in. There was a punt that hit a wire at some point, but the refs couldn't decide that it actually hit the wire. There was a penalty on a punt where a player was thrown out of bounds, hit Nick Bosa in the leg, so he was now banged up for the rest of the game.
It's the Murphy's Law game.
There was a missed call on the 4th down completion to Devontae Smith that should have been overturned, but wasn't. And the Eagles go down and score a touchdown. It's just so many weird things happened in the first quarter of that game, and ultimately none of them matter because the 49ers didn't have a functional offense by the end of it.
Right. And like, just like even so like, okay, so I was like really excited because I was like, okay, the Niners are still keeping them in it because the defense is playing well. But then of course, when Josh Johnson gets hurt, it's like, okay, they had like 3 delay games, like even with Josh Johnson in there, they had like all the delay, they could barely even get the play calls in. Like
he's saying he can't hear the play call. It was a mess.
It was a mess. It felt like a preseason game. It really did, even though it's the NFC freaking championship. But I mean, it was not to take away like even like the Eagles offense. It was really cool to watch them find answers against a really good.
I do want to talk about that, and I do want to give them credit because I thought a couple of the tweaks that they had were really important. And it's funny because the game was 38-7.
Yeah.
Or 31-7, whatever the score ended up being. The last week was 38-7. Yeah. It's a 31-7 game. And it sounds silly to be like, oh man, like this is kind of why I thought the Eagles were going to win the game. The Eagles won the game because Josh Johnson got hurt and half of Brock Purdy played. But the tweaks that they had with their run game in the first half, that was why I thought the Eagles would win a close game. So what happened was Ted did a really good job of outlining this, and you can correct me if any of this is wrong. But on the drive where Bosa made the crazy play on where he played both the running back and the quarterback on the keeper to Hurts near the goal line, the Eagles ran trips looked to the right side and they ran to the trip side. So on their following drive, they come out and they run a little RPO to the trip side again out of a bunch, and they run to the weak side. And so they have numbers to that side because Hufanga on that side. And that was the first 17-yard Kenny Gainwell run they got a chunk off of. And then later on that same drive, similar kind of look, 3 receivers to the right side, they run the exact same play back to the weak side for the Miles Sanders touchdown. So they saw something if they lined up that way and ran back weak side, what they could do. And the only real difference with how the plays were blocked is that on the first play, it's a 3 technique to the left side. So Kelsey just climbs to the linebacker. On the second play, it's a 1 technique to Kelsey's side. So they run a little wipe fold back around and climbs up to the second level. And so It's a small thing, but that's why I have confidence in the Eagles offense, because they'll find whatever little sliver of daylight you're provide for them and eventually get a lot of production out.
Yeah, they made it really hard on Jalen Hurts, the 49ers defense did, and the go balls are pretty tough to complete in 18-mile-an-hour winds. And this is the 5th best rush offense since 2002. This is a historically great running offense. That's why this Eagles team is tremendous. They find different answers and they adjust. But no, that breakdown, I had it. I said Eagles started pounding the rock, and that was it. So the whole game, whole first half, whole second half until game got out of hand, the Eagles were hiding the running backs' strength alignment. So they're putting them in a home position. So picture a pistol where the quarterback's in the gun with the running back behind them, and then shifting them to either strong or weak. Strong is when you're towards the tight end, the running back strong alignment, or normal alignment, a weak alignment away from the tight end. So they kept hiding it because the linebackers for the 49ers and Hufanga, they're really freaking smart. And they know, oh, okay, so if the back's weak in the gun, that's why usually it's hard to run from the shotgun, is because the back's alignment gives away what type of runs you can run. Some teams are very good. The Chiefs can be really good at like running same side runs, so you're hiding tendencies. But Eagles were smart, so they kept hiding it. And then finally they're saying, well, if we go trip strong, with the running back strong towards the bunch, the linebackers are kicking over because Fred Warner's trying to play both. This was exactly what the Cowboys were doing out of their formations last week, where they're putting Fred Warner in a bind. We don't have to block him, just make him wrong. And so they just put him in a bind. It's so simple sometimes, but that's exactly what they did. And because the linebackers
on the Gainwell play, he did not move.
He didn't move.
Literally did not move on that 17-yard Kenny Gainwell run.
Because he's like, screw that. I'm not letting AJ Brown catch a slant behind me or flat behind me. But they were running bubbles.
Goddard was running the little bubble. And so there was no good answer because Hufanga was also on that side.
It's just simple, good football. And that's what it is. But it's those run plays, and on the touchdown especially, because they're bumped over, because Greenlaw and Warner are bumped towards the strength of the formation, that creates such favorable run angles, and they're running weak side zone. Like you said, Kelsey did a couple things different, but they are winning right at the snap of the ball, just because the linebacker he's climbing to, he already has leverage on. Usually on weak side zone, the center's racing to get his head across, so the running back has to make him right. Here, he's like, all right, I'm already all the way across from him. So it's just a clear running lane for the running back. So again, they find this always in every game. They started to do the 1-by-3 formations where the tight end's a lone guy and they have 3 receivers to strength, and they were just running the flat stuff. And again, Warner, learning his lesson from last week, was running out with the flat. He was like, I'm not letting AJ Brown catch these flats. And so they're just pounding the rock. Miles Sanders got like a little 5-7 yard gains on that. Just simple football, just making them wrong without even having to block them.
This Eagles team, I mean, this is just a plan coming together, man.
Yep.
You look at what they were last year, and they kind of stumble into the playoffs. They have this really weird team where they're super run heavy, and they make this mid-season transition to this version of the offense, and Steichen takes over play calling, and they have to really operate one specific way because they don't really have any other way to move the ball because their passing game just isn't that elevated. Devontae Smith is a rookie. Dallas Goedert's a nice player, but Jalen Hurts is not a fully formed quarterback at all at that point. They get to the offseason and say, okay, we have a rookie quarterback contract and we have a lot of assets.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do with this? They go out and they make the A.J. Brown trade.
Yes.
They use some of that excess money that they have to go sign Hassan Reddick.
Yep.
They sign James Bradbury off the street. They go make the C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade. They use every available asset to build the best roster in the NFL, top to bottom. I don't think it's even a conversation for 22 starters, 25 guys with a little bit of depth, what the best team in the league looks like. It was absolutely the Eagles all year. And it was the Eagles, I think, coming into the season.
Yep.
The biggest question was, what sort of step could their offense take?
Yes.
And they made a bet by saying, if we go out and get some crazy pass catchers and we have a guy who really wants to get better, we have an offensive staff that we feel fantastic about that's going to put him in the right positions. With these bets, we can potentially get where we want to go. And now they're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's that was the hang up, was how much are they going to get out of this passing game? Or is it going to be gimmicky? Is it going to be RPO heavy? And as soon as they don't have a lead, it helps that they generally are playing from ahead in a lot of games this season, but that speaks to how dominant this roster was. But this was the mainline, streamlined offense, and Hurts was a great trigger man for it. He knew how to get the job done. Seeing him learn, like really just being a quarterback and understand, like I feel like he's so much more in control. Like even when he's huddling, he's kind of telling guys what to do. It just seems like he has
confidence, man.
It's confidence.
It's just confidence.
Being a Pro Bowl, second team All Pro will kind of do that a little bit. Like that'll really boost your confidence, but also speaks. Yes, they bet on him, and he's been remarkable this year. Just like I said, he came in second in MVP, I believe, and second team All Pro. Yada yada yada. Oh, MVP voting hasn't happened, but All Pro and all that.
He will be up there.
He'll be up there. He was a finalist, but is that he was more or less a non-factor in this game. And the rest of the roster is so freaking good that it didn't really matter. I'm not trying to knock Hurts. I'm speaking to he won them games earlier in this year by his talents and what he can do. But the fact that he didn't have to be a factor in this game and it still was a blowout is kind of just speaks to how awesome this roster is. I mean, how great this offensive line is in this run game, and this defense can make it tough on a lot of offenses. There's not many offenses that have really tested this defense either. So it just speaks to how good this Eagles team is, and just the position that Hurts has helped put him in this year.
The fact that he, even when he's not moving the ball through the air consistently, can change the numbers in the run game and always give them an advantage there is a huge part of just what this team is.
The Niners had a key on them. Every time they did a zone play, three Niners defenders are like making sure, I mean, in a good way, but that means they spent all week focusing on him. That means he is a tangibly good, effective, like game-changing type player. That's what he is this year.